and welcome to this special 2024 NFL season preview edition of the BCS Sports or BCS Podcast. We're going to be covering both conferences, all 8 divisions and all 32 teams, while hearing from a number of fans on how they think their teams will do this season. And let's start with the AFC and the 4 teams of the AFC North that will be the focus of the latest series of Hard Knocks in season. And it makes sense that the AFC North as a whole will be the focus, given just how competitive this division should be this season. In Joe Burrow, the Cincinnati Bengals have an incredibly good quarterback who's going to want to make a point, given last season ended early for him through injury. Alongside Jamar Chase, when both are fully healthy, they are a formidable duo, and they also have T. Higgins as the number 2 wide receiver option. Adding to that, Zach Moss, formerly of the Indianapolis Colts, who's now going to be the number 1 running back, you would have thought, alongside Mike Gesicki, who should be the number 1 tight end option. And there are multiple options there for the Bengals on offense. If everything can come together for the Bengals, you would expect that they should make the playoffs this season. Similarly, the Baltimore Ravens arguably have the best dual threat quarterback in the league in Lamar Jackson. Adding to that, the connection that he has with tight end Mark Andrews, and a wide receiver room that has Nelson Aguilar, Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers among others in the room, as well as the NFL's best kicker in history in Justin Tucker, and the Ravens undoubtedly have one of the best offenses in the league. Add to that a defense that was one of the most solid in the league last season, and the Ravens 100% should be considered a Super Bowl contender this season. On this point, the Cleveland Browns made the playoffs last season thanks in no small part to having the league's best defense. They're going to want to build on that this season under Kevin Stefanski, and have done that by adding weapons on offense such as the wide receiver Jerry Jeudy in the off-season. While his character is certainly questionable, to say the least, Deshaun Watson showed during his time at the Houston Texans that he can be an exceptional playmaker. So if the Browns can get Watson back to that consistently exceptional playmaking ability, then who knows what they could achieve this season. Finally, in the AFC North, the Pittsburgh Steelers have made big changes to their quarterback room, having traded for Justin Fields from the Chicago Bears and having brought in Russell Wilson from the Denver Broncos, who they only have to pay just over $1 million to this season. For more on this, let's head over to friend of the show and Steelers fan, Jason Toms.
The 2024 Pittsburgh Steelers. Here we go. Right, so the picket fence, the offensive line, is turned into more of the Wilson turnstile. The few good things about it last year are injured now. We haven't really done much to improve it. We've got a quarterback who loves being sacked. It's his favourite thing in the world to do. He will run into sacks freely and joyfully. The one thing I will say about the running game is obviously when you've got Justin Fields and Russell Wilson as your quarterbacks, there's a little bit of dual option threat there that might see us through. We might be able to do something with that and work with that. Just not overly. I'm not optimistic we'll be a great running team, but we will be it will be something that we can rely on. The defense should be really good as it always is, pretty much. We've added Patrick Queen, from the Ravens, who is a really good player. Very excited to see him in the linebacker core, along with obviously TJ and Highsmith and all the guys that we've got there. So defensively we should be solid. So yeah, I reckon 8 or 9 wins, middle of the road, fringe playoff team at best.
Looking at the AFC East now, I really can't call who will win this division. The Buffalo Bills have lost two of their main offensive weapons in Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, while the Miami Dolphins have lost starters from both their offensive and defensive lines. Both still do have very strong rosters though, so I think it will be one of those teams who win the division. If one or both of those teams do slip into the void, could skip the New York Jets. They're going to want to avoid a repeat of last season when Aaron Rodgers went down injured in the first game of the season, and given that they have got offensive weapons in Mike Williams, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, as well as a very strong defense that has been added to further in the draft, they are at the very least going to want to make the playoffs. For more on this, let's head over to friend of the show and Jets fan, the frankly offensively good-looking Ben Carter.
Hello, Ben Carter here, New York Jets fan, and I'm feeling cautiously optimistic going into this year. Things must go better than they did last year when Aaron Rodgers went down 4 snaps into the season. He seems to be fully healthy, the shoulder still seems to be as good as it was. If he can stay upright, if he can stay healthy, I think this Jets team has got a very high ceiling. And the reason for that is because they've got a dynamic young offense around Rodgers. Breece Hall's a superstar. Garrett Wilson may well make the jump to a true number 1 wide receiver this year. And they've added some really important pieces around those guys. Notably on the offensive line, Tyron Smith, all-pro left tackle. Again, injuries are a concern, but he's healthy right now, and if he can stay on the field, he will be a massive upgrade. Same goes for Morgan Moses at right tackle. A wide receiver, Mike Williams, is a new acquisition from the Chargers. Again, a guy with bad injury history. He's coming off a very bad injury from last year, so maybe a doubt for week 1. But if he can get on the field, he will be a great number 2 opposite Wilson. Gives a new dynamic to the offense, which is much needed. And on the defensive side of the ball, a lot of the same guys returning. And we know how good that defense was last year. I expect it to be good again this year. As of this recording, the Hassan Reddick situation has not sorted itself out. But if he can come to agreement with the team and join them, then there goes your dynamic pass rusher to go with everything else they've got there. Quinnen Williams, a wrecking ball on the defensive line. CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams, 2 of the best linebackers in the lead. Sauce Gardner, nothing needs to be said about him, number 1 cornerback in the game. So yeah, the defense should be just as good as it was last year, and with any luck, the offense will start to click with a healthy Rodgers, and thankfully a more than respectable backup in Tyrod Taylor should the worst imaginable happen. So I'm optimistic. It's a tough division. You've got the Bills in there, who've been the class of that division for a few years. They'll be very good again. You've got the Dolphins, a little bit more question marks around them, but I'm a believer in what they're building over there. They'll be very competitive. The Patriots maybe not so. Feels nice to say that. It'll be a very tough race for that division title in the East, but the Jets should be right up there. The playoffs is the minimum, in my opinion, assuming health. And if they can get through the rest of the season, they can get to the playoffs. Who knows? It does feel like the sky is the limit, and the Jets are entering a window, hopefully, where they can be competitive. Certainly this year with Rodgers, who knows if there'll be another year, which is why they have to take advantage of this. So I'm going to put them down for 9 or 10 wins. Enough for at least a wild card spot, and hopefully a little run in the playoffs that might take them to, let's say, the AFC Championship game, where they'll probably get thrashed by the Chiefs or similar. But yeah, let's go Jets. Fingers crossed for a better year than last year. Let's get through Monday Night Football first and see where we go from there.
Finally, in the AFC East, there's my team, the New England Patriots. The Pats go into the 2024 season with a new head coach in Jared Mayo, who's going to hope to improve the team after what was a very bad 2023 season. I will say that I did like the players that we picked up in the draft, and I've liked what I've seen from them thus far in pre-season. It also has to be said that we've made some very good free agent signings as well. Jacoby Brissett is a good veteran quarterback that can help keep things ticking over while Drake May finds his feet in the league. And guys like Antonio Gibson and KJ Osborne are really good players that I really liked long before they became Patriots. I will say this though, I think a lot of the same problems that we had last season, we still have this season. From what I've seen in pre-season, the O-line still isn't good enough, and can guys like Gibson and Osborne and Jalen Polk, can they really show their best if Brissett and May and Joe Milton III aren't getting the proper protection in the pocket they need to be able to make plays. Are we going to make the playoffs this season? I really don't think we are, particularly in this division and particularly with an O-line that still needs a lot of improvement. What I will say though is that I've seen a lot of people saying that the Pats are going to be one of, if not the worst team in the league in 2024, and I really hope that that Jared Mayo, his players and all of the staff in New England use that kind of criticism as fuel to prove everyone wrong and have, at least a better than expected season. I'm a fan of the Patriots though, so I might not be looking at things objectively, but yeah, I certainly hope that that we can prove the doubters wrong, prove me wrong, and be better than expected this season. Over to the AFC South now, and what should be a very strong and competitive division. The Indianapolis Colts should do well this season. Anthony Richardson showed a lot of promise in his few games last season before he was injured, and he's also backed up in the quarterback room by last season's comeback player of the year, Joe Flacco. Furthermore, the Colts have also re-signed wide receiver Michael Pittman, and have got a decent defense as well. It's a good setup in Indy. They're just in a very good division is all. On that, the Houston Texans are also going to want to build on what was a fantastic season for them in 2023. Headed up by first-year head coach and quarterback combo DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud, they won the division and made the playoffs while playing very good football on both sides of the ball. In the off-season, they've then added on both sides of the ball as well, most notably adding Odell Beckham and Joe Mixon on offense, as well as a ton, as in a literal ton, of depth and quality on defense. That being said, there is too much talent on this Tennessee Titans roster, in my opinion at least, to completely dismiss their playoff chances. They've added wonderful talent on offense such as Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley to offset the loss of Derrick Henry. Much will depend on how first-year head coach Brian Callahan does though. For more on this, let's head over to Nashville, Tennessee to hear from Titans fan Shane Jones.
A couple things I want to say about the team this year. We're losing Derrick Henry. Obviously, that's our biggest departure. Hands down, best running back in my mind in the league in the past 7-8 seasons. Man, that guy is a bruiser. Just Pro Bowl all around. Leading rusher. Just can't say enough things about Derrick Henry. Just did so much for this organization, for this community. Love the guy. Obviously we departed from Mike Vrabel, who also did some great things here in Tennessee. We love the guy. He did some things that were great, but here lately it was just time to make a change. I think his replacement, Brian Callahan, is going to come in, bring the offensive minded power that we need. We're not going to be the run the ball three times every 4 downs and 3 and out. On occasions it might happen, but we're going to be throwing the ball. We've got the weapons. Will Levis, second-year quarterback, man, he's going to kill it. We've got 4 receivers that we're going to be able to count on. We got Traylon Burks, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd. I mean, just the list goes on and on. We've got a great tight end. We got guys out of the backfield. Tony Pollard, we brought in from the Cowboys, who was a Pro Bowl 1,000-yard rusher last year. Tajay Spears, them two together is going to be something to watch. It's going to be fun, guys. We're excited. Things are looking up here in Nashville, and we're ready to rock and roll, baby. Tighten up.
Finally, in the AFC South, the Jacksonville Jaguars should also be battling to win the division. In Doug Peterson, they have a Super Bowl winning head coach who improved both the team and quarterback Trevor Lawrence no end. Given that they've also signed former Welsh Rugby Union international Louis Rees-Zammit to the practice squad, the team should also be the focus of increased attention in the UK coverage, particularly if Reece Samet then makes the game day squad. For more on this, let's hear from Simon Carroll, who is the founder of The Touchdown, a British website that focuses on both the NFL and college football.
I want to talk a little bit about the Jacksonville Jaguars today. Obviously, a couple of years ago, made the playoffs for the first time under Doug Peterson. Last year, a bit of a regression, sloppy end to the season, ended up finishing 9-7, which meant they didn't make the playoffs. So I think the target for 2024 is obviously to get back to postseason again. To that end, I think they've tried to get a lot stronger in the trenches, really. Eric Armstead coming over from the 49ers was a big add for the Jaguars. I'd argue it was kind of a bit surprising for GM Trent Baalke as well when he saw that it was available, so that was a good pickup. And Anton Harrison comes back for his second year after a promising rookie campaign on the offensive line. So I think that's really where Doug and his team are focused on getting better in both trenches, and particularly bringing over Ryan Nielsen as their defensive coordinator, who'll be looking to move to a four-man front. In that regard, obviously they've given out some big contracts this off-season, no less to Trevor Lawrence, who'll be hoping to take advantage of that protection. Really, he's been given the bag, hasn't he? And then got a couple more weapons to play with now, with Brian Thomas being drafted in the first round, and Calvin Ridley heading to Tennessee to the rivals, but obviously replaced with Gabe Davis and a couple of other names out there as well. So there's been some turnover on offense too, and they're quite confident they should be a bit better on offense, especially if Lawrence can cut out the turnovers and really become that franchise quarterback they're after. But of course, the other big contract they gave out was to Josh Hines-Allen, not Josh Allen anymore, Josh Hines-Allen, who had a great Pro Bowl campaign last year. Obviously, did really well with his sack numbers and things like that. So I think they're looking for more from that too. I think the weakness in this team is possibly the secondary. I think we saw some departures there. Darius Williams being one of them, who had like 4 interceptions last season. He's gone, and just a couple of experienced veterans coming in, as well as a couple in the draft too. I think the target, as mentioned, will be to get back to that postseason for the Jaguars. And I think within the AFC South in particular, I think that's very doable. It's a wide open division, so to speak. Obviously, the Colts have got question marks. The Titans have been on a bit of a spending spree this offseason, but had a poor year last year. And then you've got the Texans. Will they have a sophomore slump with CJ Stroud? So looking for 10 wins, I imagine, the Jaguars. But anything that guarantees them playoff football, and at best a home game after that, will be ideal.
Next to the AFC West and the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. I say this as a Patriots fan, but Patrick Mahomes has already made a very strong case for being considered one of, if not the greatest quarterback of all time. If he can now go on and surpass Tom Brady's record 7 Super Bowl wins, there might not even be a debate anymore. Again, I say this as a Patriots fan from the 90s who saw Bill Belichick come in and create a dynasty. If the Chiefs can go on this season and win a 3rd consecutive Super Bowl, making it 4 Super Bowl wins in 6 seasons, then they too could make a very strong argument for being considered the greatest team in NFL history as well. The Las Vegas Raiders, meanwhile, have now installed Antonio Pierce as the new permanent head coach, and have also brought in Gardner Minshew to be the starting quarterback, meaning that Minshew Mania is going to be running wild in Sin City this season, and who knows how that could turn out. The Los Angeles Chargers also go into the new season with a new coach, having recruited Jim Harbaugh from the championship-winning University of Michigan. They have, however, lost Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen, and any team is going to miss players of that calibre. However, any team that has a quarterback the quality of Justin Herbert is going to stand a chance though, particularly given that he now also has added offensive protection in Joe Alt, and there's a defence that has players including Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. So with Jim Harbaugh at the helm, I would think that they should make the playoffs. Finally, in the AFC West, there's the Denver Broncos, who have a Super Bowl winning head coach in Sean Payton, talent in both the wide receiver and running back rooms, and a not terrible defence. They are, however, paying Russell Wilson $39 million not to play for them this season, and are instead rolling with the rookie Bo Nix at quarterback, backed up by Jared Skinner and Zach Wilson. While I don't mean too much disrespect, and it has to be said, Zach Wilson did show some signs of improvement on the Jets last season, I can't shake the feeling that the Broncos could be one of, if not the worst team this season, although I will gladly hold my hands up if I'm wrong. On to the NFC now, and what should be a strong NFC North. And let's start with the Chicago Bears, who were featured on this season's edition of Hard Knocks Training Camp. Having selected what they hope will be a generational quarterback in Caleb Williams and what is arguably one of the strongest wide receiver rooms in the league, hopes are high in the Windy City. Having won the NFC North last season and made it to the NFC Championship game, hopes are also high in the Motor City. The Detroit Lions had a fantastic 2023 season. In the off-season, they then secured Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown to extensions, as well as also signing depth and quality to both sides of the ball during the draft and free agency. And so you would expect that the Lions should make the playoffs again this season. The Green Bay Packers also made the playoffs last season with a 9-8 record. In Jordan Love, they have a young quarterback who showed signs last season of why he was brought in as the first round draft pick in the draft a few years ago, given that they also have some good young wide receivers and other talent in other areas of the field, and with Matt LaFleur still at the helm, you would think that they have a decent chance of getting into the playoffs in again what is a very strong NFC North division. Finally, in the NFC North, there are the Minnesota Vikings. They had a very disappointing season last year, finishing last in the division. They have some very good young talent, including arguably the league's best wide receiver in Justin Jefferson, but I have to say, any chance that they had of possibly making the playoffs this season were most likely ended when JJ McCarthy, the new rookie starting quarterback, went down with a torn meniscus. For more on this, let's head over to Minneapolis to hear from Vikings fan Brady Spiess.
But I guess my prediction for this year would be with the Vikings, you have a history of quarterbacks like Gus Frerotte, Jeff George, most recently Case Keenum, just these random journeyman quarterbacks kind of coming into this team. And they shouldn't amount to anything. It should be like, a 7 to 8 win season at best, and yet they take the team to the playoffs. And I think if there's anything more Vikings, it is Sam Darnold taking this team to the playoffs. So it's either going to be, my prediction is anywhere from 4 wins to 11 wins, because really this team is just one big unknown at quarterback, and until we know what that is going to look like, you really can't pin it down to anything. The defense should be solid. Special teams should be good with Will Reichert, the rookie kicker sensation that has been phenomenal in the preseason. We'll see if that holds. We are cursed at that position, but hopefully he is able to break the curse. But yeah, it might not be the most winning season, but the Vikings are going to be exciting nonetheless.
In the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys continue to be the Dallas Cowboys. Some fantastic talent, but that talent has continued to flatter to deceive, and America's team have not reached the Super Bowl since 1996 at this point. If head coach Mike McCarthy can't get this roster all pulling in the same direction and build the mental resilience, I can't see that changing this season. Meanwhile, the Washington Commanders have a new head coach in Dan Quinn, who has installed number 2 draft pick Jaden McDaniels as his starting quarterback. As you'll remember from my draft reaction episode early this year, the Commanders then went on to add some more talent on all areas of the ball in that draft, and have then added some impressive free agent signings such as the Super Bowl winning guard Nick Allegretti and Austin Eckler at running back. For more on this, let's hear from Josh Edwards, who is a Commanders fan and writer at The Touchdown.
As most people know, Dan Snyder, the previous owner, is long gone, finally. I've written extensively on that in the past, so I won't repeat it all here, but obviously I'm delighted that a new ownership group has had the chance to bed in now and gets a shot with a new coach who is a respected defensive mind and leader in Dan Quinn, a new forward-thinking and modern GM in Adam Peters, an intriguing and experienced OC in Cliff Kingsbury, and of course a new marquee quarterback in Heisman winner Jaden Daniels, who I will get on to. In free agency, the team picked up Bobby Wagner. He's obviously been around forever, but this feels like a really good signing for a team that's been deficient at linebacker forever, and with a kind of a poor culture in the locker room. And see Montez Sweat's recent comments on that in Chicago. That much is obvious. Last year, Wagner was the second highest graded run defender in football per PFF, so he's still got some in the tank, and I think he'll be a really good addition. In the draft, the team had the second overall pick and took the aforementioned Jaden Daniels, who is now has the hopes of a once marquee NFL franchise and fan base on his shoulders. I love Daniels. I think he's electric, accurate, measured, leads by example. Can't wait to see him play. In the second round, we took a tight end. And those of you who've read my stuff before know it's my favourite position on the field. We took Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State, and he looks a real player. In fact, he reminds me a huge amount of Chris Cooley, Redskins legend from back in the 2000s. And if he can get down the field a bit and be a threat in the passing game off those read options for Daniels, that will really help open up the offense. I'm excited about Ben Sinnott. But all that said, how will they do this season? I've heard chatter inside the building that they're quietly confident through various beat reporters, and to be honest, so am I. So this is a QB-driven league and an era where dual threat quarterbacks are the norm. And I love Jaden Daniels, and I think that the team has a healthy chance at a winning record for the first time since 2016. 9-8 might not be good enough for the playoffs in the NFC East, so I'll say probably won't get to the playoffs, but I think this will be a really fun year for sure.
Having featured on the inaugural season of Hard Knocks off-season, the New York Giants are going to hope that the draft picks and free agent signings featured in that show will pay off for them this season. Speaking of the Giants, the Philadelphia Eagles' big free agent signing this season was Saquon Barkley, alongside the likes of CJ Gardner-Johnson and CJ Azuma, among others. It has to be said, though, that the Eagles had an alarming decline last season as it went on, particularly on defence, and so it may be that the Eagles' best off-season signing was their new defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio, who hopefully might help to offset the loss of the influential centre Jason Kelce to retirement on offence. To the NFC South now, and one of the biggest surprises of draft night was the Atlanta Falcons signing quarterback Michael Penix Jr. With the 8th pick of the draft, particularly given that they had only just signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year, $180 million contract the previous month. Given all of this uncertainty, let's hear from friend of the show and Falcons fan, Charlie Deeks.
So obviously the Falcons have had some huge signings and not too many huge departures. The big signing, of course, in the off-season is Kirk Cousins. Huge contract, well worth it. Very excited about it. Obviously we took Penix in the draft. Fine. I was very confused and surprised at the time, but now very happy. I think it's going to be a really good off-season. Having seen Kirk run around, seem like he's okay from his Achilles injury, pretty happy with that. We also brought in Darnell Mooney from the Bears, signed him to a 3-year deal. Looks like a good signing, to be honest. Darnell Mooney was always okay, but hindered by pretty poor quarterback play in the Bears. I think he only needs to be a second option at wide receiver. We did also bring in Rondale Moore, but he tore his ACL in the offseason. It's a bit of a shame because he could have been a good little speedster in the way that we've had people like Devin Hester before, who actually was a pretty underrated wide receiver option.
There we are. I think that's going to be our 2024 season in a nutshell. If I had to guess, something like 12-5. That's what I want. I sort of expect about 10-7, 11-6, but who knows? And then in the playoffs, anything can happen. I'm optimistic. Don't know whether that's a good idea.
This New Orleans Saints team, meanwhile, is one that has talent on both sides of the ball. Teams would be foolish to underestimate any offense that features the likes of Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave, particularly given that the Saints also have a defence that features the likes of Cam Jordan, Marshawn Lattimore and the Honey Badger himself, Tyrann Mathieu. It may be then that the Saints' impediment to progress is the head coach Dennis Allen and his setup. Looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, there's also clearly talent there too. Baker Mayfield has clearly shown that he has talent when he was at the Rams, when he was at the Browns, and with the Bucs last season. It's just that that talent has not always performed consistently. It also has to be said that the Bucs have two elite wide receivers in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And it has to be said that if those three together, along with the rest of the team, which, let's not forget that the core of this team is the team that won the Super Bowl back in 2021, although I grant you that crucial quarterback position is a different guy in that it's not arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. As I said, if Baker Mayfield can start to perform consistently well with those two elite wide receivers, there's every chance that the Bucs could make the playoffs. Finally, in the NFC South, there's the Carolina Panthers. As with all the teams in this division, there is clearly talent there. Bryce Young showed last year that he does have the ability to throw the ball, and he's throwing the ball to a good wide receiver room that features Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson, and a rookie in Xavier Leggett that I'm very excited to see at the NFL level. So it's going to be very interesting to see if all of that talent can coalesce under new first-year head coach Dave Canales. And it has to be said that with Dave Canales, he is a first-year head coach, and they can at times make mistakes and make errors. And as we've seen under the Panthers owner David Tepper, he does not always have patience for mistakes or underperformance, which would not be a surprise under a first-year head coach. But Dave Canales is someone that came up under the Pete Carroll learning tree, so he's clearly had an excellent mentor, and so you would think that that would lend itself to Canales being a good head coach that puts everything in place so that the setup at the Panthers improves and becomes better, as long as he is given the chance by David Tepper to actually implement that setup and get it up to speed and get it working how he wants it to be. Finally, to the NFC West now. The San Francisco 49ers come into the 2024 season fresh off another appearance in the Super Bowl, and they're certainly going to hope to make it there again this season. They arguably have one of the very best offenses in the league, and in Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and to a certain extent Deebo Samuel, they have three of the very best players in their positions in the league. Given that they also have a very good defense, and they've resolved the issues with Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams contracts, all the pieces are there for the 49ers to make another Super Bowl run this season. If anyone is going to challenge the 49ers for the NFC West division title, though, it's going to be the Los Angeles Rams. They have a sparkling defense in place, led by Matt Stafford at quarterback, who has a wonderful connection with Cooper Kupp at wide receiver, and the absolute revelation of last season that was Puka Nacua. It does have to be said, though, that any team is going to miss a player the calibre and quality of Aaron Donald on defence, and that really could be the thing that prevents the Rams from challenging the 49ers seriously for that division title. You also have to look at the Seahawks as well. The Seattle Seahawks are starting the season with a new head coach in Mike McDonald, who certainly comes into the position, with a great history in the league. His achievements on defense at the Ravens last season were fantastic. The Ravens had one of the best defenses in the league last season, and so if he can implement his strategy and his setup, then there's every chance that the Seahawks could use this season to build a foundation to then start seriously challenging the Rams and the 49ers for division titles in years to come. For more on this, let's hear what friend of the show Nick Wright had to say about the Seahawks when I spoke to him earlier this summer.
Going into this year, there's definitely some excitement. Mike McDonald coming across from Baltimore, young, exciting defensive mind, I think really young for a head coach. It's about time. The Seahawks, in my view, needed change a couple of years ago. I'm excited to see where the team goes, and I think there's a lot of holes still. Quarterback being the big one. It's Geno Smith coming in again this year. He is going to be the favourite to get the job to start the season. Geno's been great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Geno's been a lot better than people expected. But whether he's a quarterback that can lead you a Super Bowl, I don't think so. I'm interested to see how it goes, but it's going to be a complete culture shock to these players not having Pete's style of leadership, I think.
The team that I see propping up the NFC West and maybe even the entire league is the Arizona Cardinals. There is talent there, and I am excited to see what Marvin Harrison Jr. can do at the NFL level, but this is a team that is only 1 or 2 injuries away from being their season being a complete wipeout, particularly if Kyler Murray goes down again. As with my other predictions, I will gladly hold my hands up if they prove me wrong though. With all that being said, let's finish this episode by going back to Josh and Simon from the Touchdown Again to see who they think will make this season's Super Bowl.
My preseason tip to win the Super Bowl is the Baltimore Ravens. Somehow most people still seem to be underrating and underappreciating a 2-time MVP and one of the most dynamic playmakers in NFL history. I'll always be all in on Lamar Jackson, and I think the Ravens could be a really nice pick in an NFC where a lot of the other fantasy teams have fatal flaws.
Super Bowl shout for me. I'm going to go a little bit left field here, maybe the Green Bay Packers. I think Jordan Love, obviously we're going to see a bit more improvement again in his 3rd year in the league, his 2nd as a starter. I think they've got some sneaky underrated weapons on offense, and it's always difficult to go and play in Lambeau.
Once again, thank you to everyone who contributed to this episode. For now though, that is the end of this special NFL 2024 season preview edition of the BCS Podcast. As always, I thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye bye now. The BCS Podcast is written, produced, edited and hosted by me, Brett Walker. Thank you to Boris Anderoff and Pixabay for the use of the music and sound effects in this podcast. This episode features contributions from Simon Carroll, Ben Carter, Charlie Deeks, Josh Edwards, Shane Jones, Brady Spiess and Jason Toms.